And you can't look down to read the speech, you have to take the speech up. Because if you did, your neck would break, but it'd fall off.
Yesterday on September 8th, 2022, it was announced that Queen Elizabeth II had passed away at the age of 96. She was the longest reigning monarch and she sat on the throne for 70 years. She was and remains a beloved figure in Britain, but with her passing, people have been looking at her life, her legacy, as well as that of her successor, and with the in-depth looks into the past, some secrets start to be revealed. Welcome back to Where Are They Now? I'm your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and today we are going to be diving into the life of the Queen, as well as discussing some of the royal family secrets that are bubbling back up to the surface. Before we dive in though, guys, please hit that like button if you enjoy this video, it really does help us out. With that, let's dive right in. Queen Elizabeth II's life took a wild turn quite early on. When she was born, she was never meant to be the queen, but that all changed when her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated the crown because he wanted to marry outside of what his role would allow him. This meant that King George VI, Queen Elizabeth's father, was left as his successor. Queen Elizabeth was just 10 years old at this point, and her life was never going to be the same. Queen Elizabeth certainly never expected to take the throne at such a young age. In fact, it is said that she wasn't even aware of her father's declining health. When King George VI passed away in his sleep on February 5th, 1952, Queen Elizabeth and her husband, Prince Philip, were on a royal tour. This tour had them in the Treetops Hotel in Kenya when the news broke, which meant that Queen Elizabeth was one of the last people to know. This left Queen Elizabeth on the throne earlier than she had ever expected, which is an incredibly difficult task to live up to. No one has ever said that being a queen was an easy job. The queen went on to have 4 children, and while 3 of them, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince Andrew, have all spoken highly of their mother, it ironically was the now King Charles III who, in his 1994 biography, lamented that it was essentially the nursery staff who taught him how to play, who witnessed his milestone moments, and who he feels sort of raised him. Aside from these difficult truths, it is also said that the queen felt quite a bit of guilt over being called to serve her country, which meant that she wasn't able to be as active in raising her children as she would have been should she have not been the queen. This goes hand in hand with tales of how frugal the queen was. Apparently, while being worth millions, she's also said to have been on quite the cheap streak. There were even rumors that she refused to allocate any money toward kitchen supplies, which meant that the royal cooks were using pots and pans from the 1800s that still had Queen Victoria's stamp on them. While she was tight with her own budget, she is said to have indulged plenty in her children, perhaps as a way to mitigate her guilt over what we just discussed. A former cleric even said to the Telegraph that, quote, in her own financial matters, she was tight, but she's been very extravagant with her children. She's indulged them terribly. She allowed Andrew and Sarah to build that house in Ascot when there were perfectly good homes available elsewhere. So far as I could see, they couldn't have cared less about the budget, but the queen didn't come down on them. She just paid up, and that was very wrong. On that count, she's guilty in spades. When we look more into the queen and her relationships, this is when the real dark secrets begin to come out. Earlier on in this video, I mentioned Queen Elizabeth's uncle, the one who abdicated the throne, which effectively put her in line when she was never meant to be. This uncle, King Edward VIII, abandoned the throne because he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson. Wallis is an American socialite who had been divorced twice, and as king, Edward was forbade from marrying somebody who had been divorced. There was public and political outrage, and it left him stepping away from this role. This is already bad enough from the standpoint of the royal family, but imagine the standpoint they and the rest of the world had when Edward and Wallis were accused of being sympathizers. Wallis is said to have had a love affair with a member of that hateful group before even meeting Edward, and for Edward he is said to have been very proud of his German heritage. There is certainly nothing wrong with being proud of your heritage, but when it causes you and your wife to take a trip to visit and hang out with Hitler, things become a little dicey. In fact, it is said that Adolf desperately wanted Edward back on the throne so that he could act as a sort of puppet for him. Wallis was also accused at one point of sharing British intelligence with Germany, which obviously is a huge no-no for many reasons. The 90s were certainly a rough era for the royal family. There was the divorce of Princess Anne from her husband after he had a child outside of their marriage. There was Prince Andrew, who divorced Duchess Sarah Ferguson after the whole very strange toe-sucking scandal. Not here to kink-shame anyone, it's just not the kind of thing you want to know about the royal family. And then of course we have Prince Charles and Princess Diana's crumbling marriage due to the infidelity, and Princess Diana's Diana's death. There have been many a rumor that suggests that the royal family had quite the hand in the death of Princess Diana, and while those could certainly and hopefully are just rumors, no one can deny the strange and cold behavior that was observed after her death. After Diana's death, the flags weren't even lowered to half-mast until there was public outcry about it. Some believe that had there been no backlash, they might not have been lowered at all. Before Diana's passing, King Charles had long been having an extramarital affair, and it is said that everyone, including the Queen, knew, and some blamed her for not intervening and putting a stop to it, because if anyone could, it would have been her. It's also worth noting that while of course the monarchy is all about family ties, the proper royal chain was shattered long before Queen Elizabeth's uncle abdicated. Back in 2012, 10 years ago, the remains of King Richard III were discovered. This was 500 years after his death, and they were able to do some DNA testing. This testing confirmed that they could not link the remains to any paternal relatives. This means that at some point down the line, someone was having an affair and a quote-unquote illegitimate heir was placed in power. This basically suggests that those in power now are only in that position because of a past, well-hidden secret. While many people in Britain are grieving the loss of their queen, and those sympathies can certainly be felt worldwide, there are also people who are grieving for very different reasons. For others, the death of the queen revived these sort of memories and wounds of the region's colonial past, and it reminded people of the monarchy's role in the slave trade. It's not necessarily the queen that people didn't like, although that does exist too, but it's more about the monarchy and what it stands for in the dark histories and the roles that the royal family has played in historic atrocities. Queen Elizabeth I played a key role in the development of the Atlantic slave trade. Queen Victoria's rule saw the engineering of the potato famine that killed 1 million Irish people. Charles II and those around him actively condoned and encouraged not only the harassment and displacement, but also the massacre of Indigenous Americans. This is just a drop in the bucket of an extremely troubled past. One of the major points that people who don't support the Queen had was how her banking empire supports the continued pillaging of Africa, which comes to a total of about $41 billion a year through secrecy jurisdictions. I'm not saying that anyone is perfect, but I am saying that there are plenty of people out there who have a right and a pretty good reason to not want to support the monarchy or the Queen. People are certainly worried for the future of the monarchy, and I can understand why. When Queen Elizabeth II came into her role, the UK held more than 70 overseas territories as part of the empire, but now that number has dwindled to just 14. The monarchy held a lot more power in the beginning of her reign than it does now, and it is no secret that the Queen was looked on a lot more favorably than the new king. King Charles has had his fair share of scandals, and in our technological world full of news that can travel fast, these scandals might only cause there to be less support for the monarchy. It is possible that the tides will change, but only time will tell. At the end of the day, Queen Elizabeth II had a long reign. She was adored by many, and I know those who loved her are mourning. Let us know your thoughts down below in the comments, and we will see you next time on Where Are They Now?